Welcome back to another episode of Injustice for All. Listen, I think this is episode 22. I need to get the number episodes right.
26.
21. No, it's not 26.
Yeah, we did 22 for the last 4 weeks. Anyway, somewhere in
Yeah. So, all right. I want to start off by talking about Candace Owens, honey. She is popping.
Okay. Candace Owens, what about her?
Well, the president and his quote unquote wife is suing Candace for defamation. Let me share this. Let me just share this.
You were born a man and you will die a man. That's the point I'm making. So give us a sample. I'll send my doctors to take your blood. Figure it out real quick, however you want to go about this. Hey, how about just giving us some pictures again of you growing up, raising your children? That would be fine. For whatever reason, to phone, by the way, like I said, we'll get to the bottom of it, right? That is what discovery is for. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. You're probably hoping, this will go away and at least we'll say we sued her. We'll say we went after her. She'll probably file for this to get dismissed. I'd like to make it to discovery. I think that we owe that to the world. Anyways, you guys, we are revolting against this. We're revolting against the perverts that run the world. And I want to be very clear here. I count you among them. I think you're sick. I think you're disgusting. And I am fully prepared to take on this battle on behalf of the entire world. Okay? That's what I'm going to say. On behalf of the entire world, I will see you in court. You were born.
Also, she's gone viral in China. She's gone viral in China. She posted this. Someone commented, Candace, I can't pronounce this city in China. Your special on Mr. and Mrs. Macron has gone viral here too. Congrats, everyone knows. Yeah. And this is the lawsuit. Well, this is the first page of it. And as I mentioned to you before, they filed this in the Superior Court of the state of Delaware, March 2024. Candace Owens, a right-wing podcaster, told the world she would stake her entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron, the First Lady of France, is in fact a man. Since then, Owens has used this false statement to promote her independent platform, gain notoriety, and make money. Owens disregarded all credible evidence disproving her claim in favor of platforming known conspiracy theorists and proven defamers. And rather than engage with President and Mrs. Macron attempts to set the record straight, Owens mocked them and used them as additional fodder for her frenzied fan base. Owens did not stop there, retaliating against the Macrons for the audacity of sending her a retraction demand. Owens helmed an 8-part podcast series entitled Becoming Bridget the Series, and accompanying X posts. Throughout the series, Owens and her entities, Candace Owens LLC, and this is just the first page. So,
etc. What court is it filed in? I can't read that.
it says in the Superior Court of the state of Delaware.
Okay, how do they get jurisdiction in Delaware since she does not live there? This is a civil action filed in a state court. What jurisdiction does Delaware have over Candace Owens, who is a resident of Tennessee? And he is a resident of a foreign country. So how does he file in Delaware? See, it could get dismissed on a technical basis for that reason. Next thing is she talked about she wants discovery. Be careful when you file a defamation action, because you then become wide open to civil discovery, and they can ask about rumors, innuendo, demand documents, and all sorts of things, and they can basically publish their case up front on what they are basing their claims on. Next thing, since 1962 in the United States, with the case of New York Times versus Sullivan, the United States Supreme Court has set forth some rather interesting guidelines when it comes to any potential claims of defamation by a public figure. And the Premier of France certainly qualifies as a public figure. Next thing, this is not France, this is not England, this is the United States, and under our First Amendment, we have a right to make scathing political commentary or social commentary. If as long as it's not with malicious intent known to be false from the front end, it can also be hyperbole, where you are making a political point. A lot of times in American history, when somebody does a political cartoon, the villain of the cartoon is portrayed as a snake or some vile, villainous creature, or features are exaggerated. So somebody that is one of the, in charge of the executive branch of a member of NATO and a long-standing political entity that started off when Rollo of Ragnar Lothbrok fame and the Vikings came in and got given a fief in what became Normandy to keep his Viking brethren out of France. And the ancestor of the last king of France, who was Louis XIV, and his wife Marie Antoinette, famously uttered, allegedly, the phrase, "let them eat cake," before she lost her head over it. Well, since then, back more than 1,000 years, this has been a main country. And certainly if you're the premier over such an entity, you are subject to scathing political commentary. And she's talking about her First Amendment opposition to what is developing in the United States as a cult that seeks to impose itself on the rest of the country. So she can certainly talk about her opinion relative to the spread, and then there's a possibility she's only using it as a euphemism. So in any event, I don't think his case is going to lie. And in fact, yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously threw out Mexico's lawsuit against American gun manufacturers for a number of reasons, including some that will apply to this case if it tries to go anywhere. But she doesn't want to file for dismissal. She wants to go for it. Good for her.
So that letter said they are requesting a jury trial.
Doesn't make any difference. The problem is, if you file a state action, what's the connection between the parties? Is there a contract between him and her saying that we want the jurisdiction of Delaware to handle this matter? I would be willing to bet good money that there is not. So if you file a state action, there needs to be some kind of connection between the states you filed it in and either yourself, which is not, because he is the chief officer of a foreign country, which is across the Atlantic, and she's a resident of Tennessee. So where does he go with this? He's got to show jurisdiction. It's like I'm a judge, a retired circuit court judge from Tennessee, handle mostly criminal stuff. But if somebody filed a lawsuit that wound up in front of me and it involved somebody that lived in another state, filed by somebody that lives in another state or outside the United States, and there's nothing to connect what they are complaining about or defending about with Tennessee, it's out of there, or out of the venue of Memphis, Shelby County. It's out of there. So, another exercise in futility from people who don't understand the American system and considering the failure of the mainstream media to keep the citizens of this country apprised of what their law is about, the system's about, how it works, and to keep them continuously upgraded in terms of educational status and knowledge about their system. It's not surprising that somebody in a foreign place does not know it. Although, if he is dealing with the United States as the senior partner in NATO, upon which France was depending heavily, well, it seems to me that you would learn something about somebody that you had to deal with on a regular basis. That's just more ignorance in the world.
So how serious is this? Because basically,
It's not.
it's well, Candace said, and this is what I do appreciate about Candace, because she said, listen, people, don't be afraid when people try to come at you, especially when you know you're doing the right thing and you know your rights. And she's like, she invites it and she wants it to go to discovery. So I think, do you think this was a bad move on the president of France sending a lawsuit to the United States? A bad move politically and publicly?
I think it was an ignorant move, lacking in wisdom. See, I admire this young lady. I've met her. She's very personal. She takes care of a lot of business and she's dedicated to doing the right thing, and she is. She has intestinal fortitude. I wish so many people that whine about them getting treated unjustly, and by the way, what is it? Injustice for all, so it's topical. Main thing, they put all in the penitentiary because they get false confessions. No, they don't. And just about 2% of the people who are in American penitentiaries, and this is held consistently for the last half century, just about 2% were found guilty by judge or jury. The other 97+% pled guilty, and out of that, depending upon what decade or year it is, 84 to 87% confessed. And when you look at the tapes or recordations of the confession, they're square on confessions and nobody coerced them. And here lately, it's really strange to see detectives trying to talk some fool out of confessing without consulting with a lawyer. So, I mean, this is what we need more of, somebody with the fortitude to say, bring it on.
So what happened next when somebody sends you this? It wasn't in the state you live in, state of Delaware. So what happens next in this situation?
She's a very wealthy person. I thought she lived, when I visited her home, I thought it was an office building. Elevators going from the floor, and that's her house. So she's got offices, full-size gym, daycare in there. And I mean, it looks like preschool, a library, and a recording studio. It's like, wow. And then her husband's family is very well connected, about as high as you can get. So she's got the financial wherewithal to fight it. And I think she intends to. And the problem is just like a lot of stuff going on today, we've got things that are filed by people that ought to know better, but in their ignorance, they mess up thoroughly. Like one example I can think of locally, somebody got national notoriety for filing a huge lawsuit. And when you get into Tennessee law, their plaintiff has absolutely no standing in the matter. So, I would assume, since this person is supposed to be an expert in the subject, they knew better, but they didn't. And I think this is the same kind of thing here, because it would be kind of a stretch. What are you doing? And the other thing is they have to serve her. So if they filed in Delaware, they're going to have to bring Delaware process to where she lives
They did
to
the
serve
process.
her.
She did get served.
Okay, so how did she get served? If she accepted it, that's fine. But see, it has to be personal service. Somebody has to walk up and say, here, and see, when you do that, where does the service come from? Out of state. Oh,
Well,
you
this
can
is not
walk
her.
into a tennis. What's that?
This is. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
This is not her first lawsuit. So I watched her show yesterday. She had 70,000 people in that live, and she said, "Listen, she knows this is not her first lawsuit. She knows the process of person who served her the papers personally. So they served it to her, and she's basically saying, "Bring it on. I want this to
I
go all
got
the
it.
way to discovery."
I got it. But see, she can file for dismissal for improper venue and jurisdiction and lack of jurisdiction. See, if you win in Delaware, Delaware has got to enforce its own judgment or try to get another state to enforce it. So the problem is what does she have in Delaware that they can touch? Now, the other thing is she's always got the parachute. She can go boom, the ejection sheet goes up, parachute opens automatically. I accepted the process, but what's your connection with Delaware? It isn't like she got sued in federal court. This is a foreign entity who happens to hold a political office, and he is under New York Times versus Sullivan. He and his wife subject to scathing commentary. Look at what they say about Trump. Look at what they say about Obama. You know, anything they've said about them can be said about him. Hey, that rhymes. Anything to say about them, they can say about him.
So let me bring this in, freedom of press, because this is what we have here in America: freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom to assembly. And France, I don't know how far their freedom of press extends, but I think they're barking up the wrong tree, because you had the audacity to send a lawsuit to a United States citizen. So freedom of press, how much protection do we have when it comes to
a whole lot. You can say anything you want to. It may be subject to a civil action for defamation, which is what this is. It's not against the law. But in England, they right now have a headline case over there where they're trying to put somebody in jail for 5 years in an English prison because he put into words that a very out of shape, very overworked member of parliament was fat. So that's supposed to be against the criminal laws of England. See, we don't have that. We have a basis of English law, but the First Amendment was put in to be reflected in our Constitution so that what they could hypothetically do in England could not be done here. You see, you can be put in jail for calling somebody the F word or calling somebody gay like you're trying to insult them, or calling somebody the N word, or calling somebody fat or out of shape or queer or strange. You see, in France, if you get arrested, you are presumed guilty until you prove yourself innocent. They don't have juries in France. They say through the principle of l'intime conviction, which means the gut reaction of a wise man is as reliable as a 12-man English jury. So you get jacked up by the gendarmerie, you have to prove yourself not guilty. But they won't mess with you like they do over here.
Well, this lawsuit is 219 pages.
It's ridiculous. And actually, I read some of this, but I forgot what the caption said. Most of what I read has been held many times to be permissible to say about a public figure. But you see, here's this thing. In America, they're trying to get this rainbow cult thing in the same position it is in France and England. So if you say anything negative about it, you have committed something that's civilly actionable and criminally actionable as well. They aren't even trying right now to go criminally active, but they're trying to work on the civil thing. But since Kamala got held off and stomped on last November, they are not in a position, fortunately, to try to make what this guy is talking about criminal here in America like it is in France. Different way.
And I was trying to see if I could find out, were they asking for, I want to file a lawsuit, I want to sue her for $1 million. Like, what are they asking for? To take it down, to shut down her YouTube, to retract, maybe all of the above. But I'm not going through no 219 page.
Well, the point is, it's a showpiece thing. It's an effort to save face in Europe. The way they do it, remember, these are the people that had you, sir, slap, slap, slap. I challenge you to a duel. Our seconds will talk to make arrangements. You know, this is the type of thing.
It says here, the complaint against Candace Owens, request not yet specify actual presumed and punitive monetary damages and such other and additional remedies as the court may deem just and proper. So they have not specified any actual presumed or punitive monetary damages.
She could send her legal crew up there and make a special appearance and say, we protest the jurisdiction of this court. There is no connection between Delaware and the residence of the defendant, nor is there any connection between Delaware and the residence of the complainant. How is it in this court? Did you forum shop because you say, wow, whoopee, this is where that trailer park trash guy, urban trailer park trash guy came from, whose son is the famous crackhead that had the 3 laptops that got downloaded by the technician that got pardoned by daddy.
Joe Biden, yeah. So again, she has the means to fight it. She plans on fighting it. She welcomes it, and she wants it to go all the way to discovery.
She wants to see. I like people who do this. Say, bring it on.
Yeah,
I can't stand people who sit there and yak and complain. But when it's time to step in the ring, they're running and hiding, going back into the, to take a shower someplace, to put their street clothes back on.
And this lawsuit, like I said, it says jury trial demanded. So they're demanding a jury trial. So if that's the case, wouldn't they have to have discovery?
The point is she's sued. She's the one that can call the shots on the discovery, on a defamation action. Is it or is it not true that on such and such a day you did? Is it or is it not true that on such and such day this happened? Is it or is it not true that there are no, like she alleged, no photographs showing so and so? Please produce all photograph or imagery that would show the person in question as growing up. And see, the other thing too is, go back to that, and who is listed as the plaintiff? Let's look at it again.
Yeah. Okay. Let me make it bigger.
Yeah, please. Let me take a read.
Let's see. Oh no, wait a minute.
The only person that has standing
So it
in
says
American
in
action for
plaintiffs,
defamation,
mhm,
the
it
only
says,
person is the wife. See, he has no
okay, so it says,
standing.
yeah, Emmanuel Macron and Bridget Macron plaintiffs.
She has standing. He has none.
And they said versus Candace Owens LLC, and George Tom Inc. George Tom Inc.
Was she defaming him in any fashion other than saying that's who you married? But remember, in France, that rainbow stuff is approved. So where it could go is like a New York court, superior court, or an appellate court in New York held that accusing somebody of being gay is not subject to a defamation action in New York because being gay is not anything that defames anybody. That's what they ruled. I don't know how that'll stand up elsewhere in the country, but it's the same thing over there. Like, what did she accuse you of that's defamatory? See, Delaware is one of those in-between states that gets kind of crazy and sometimes it's reasonable. They might say, how can you claim defamation if they, like the president, former U.S. senator from here, he pushed this and said it's okay. So if it's okay, how are you defaming somebody for being okay? See, there's all kinds of crazy stuff in here, and it's a foolish, ignorant move.
So in conclusion, I will say here, say this. This is a plus for Candace because
Yes.
she's live right now and she has over 60,000 people in her live.
Yeah.
So and this is good for her. It's good for her business. Bad publicity for France, for the president and his wife in France.
Exactly. Like I said, what do I attribute this to? Ignorance. And see, here's another thing. Miss Owens is somebody that is potentially new youthful leadership that is so lacking in this country. She's making a national name for herself for taking the right position on something and showing that she has intestinal fortitude. See, we don't see that. We see loudmouths that, like BLM, they go smear themselves naked with gold grease paint, stand in front of churches, police stations, and city halls, and con people out of a lot of money and buy $1 million estates out in Los Angeles off of Mulholland Drive and channel the money into civil insurrection and supporting the Democratic Party and LGBTQIA plus. But see, she's the real deal. She's actually showing that she's got what it takes to face down danger or liability in this case or hazard, whereas so many others talk a good game and have never done that and won't do that. They won't speak back to power, but she does.
Well, I'm not going so far as saying she's some new leader. She's a journalist, and she says she is a journalist, and I
Nothing
think
wrong with a journalist being a leader. A lot of people that signed the Declaration of Independence were deep off into journalism. A lot of people that had something to do with the Constitution were into journalism. A lot of people who have pushed the envelope from Aristotle all the way up to Lincoln, to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, to a number of other people. They put pen to paper. The pen is mightier than the sword. So we need to remember that.
Muscogee Nation Supreme Court rules freemen are citizens. Let me play this.
In a landmark decision, the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court ordered citizenship for Creek freedmen. Thanks for joining us tonight at 6. I'm TJ Eckert.
I'm Naomi Kitt. I've been covering this story for years, even sitting through arguments in front of the Supreme Court just 43 days ago. Today, I dug through the court order and talked with an attorney who says this decision is decades in the making.
It's a joyous occasion.
Attorney Demario Solomon Simmons represents Rhonda Grayson and Jeff Kennedy. The pair applied for citizenship into the Muscogee Nation in 2019, but were denied because their relatives were on the Dawes-Friedman rolls, not the blood rolls. Wednesday, the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court said they will be citizens because the Treaty of 1866 guarantees it.
And I just appreciate the Supreme Court for looking at the law and applying the law as it's written.
Demario has been at the center of this fight for years, and it's deeply personal for him.
And to know that when I was born a Creek citizen, and now because of this decision, I can once again become a Creek citizen.
He told me his great-great-great-great-grandfather helped negotiate the Treaty of 1866 between the Muscogee Nation and the federal government. It grants citizenships to Creeks of African descent who were primarily the tribe's enslaved people. But in 1979, the Muscogee Nation Constitution added a citizenship clause, saying members had to have relatives on the blood rolls. 46 years later, this Supreme Court decision struck that down, saying, quote, "Are we, as a nation, bound to treaty promises made so many years ago?" Today, we answer in the affirmative, because this is what Muscogee law demands.
We want so badly that this era could be over with, that we can reconcile with our nation.
The court order removes the by blood provision in the Muscogee Constitution and requires the Citizenship Board to apply the Treaty of 1866 to Jeff and Rhonda's case, letting them into the nation. It also says all future applicants who can prove a connection to the Dawes rolls, either freedmen or blood, need to be approved as citizens.
What does that mean that they made sure that the next group is protected too?
Well, it means two things. One, it means that they understood the gravity of the situation. Number two, it says that this issue again can be behind all of us Black Creeks or Creek freemen, and we can just go by the term of Creek. Just let us be who we are.
Demario says the ruling upholds the Muscogee Nation's sovereignty, since the same treaty was used to justify the landmark McGirt ruling upholding tribal jurisdiction.
They understood that this treaty, by protecting Article 2 of the treaty, you protect the entire treaty.
The decision would grant the freedmen access to all benefits of tribal members. Demario told me he plans to reach out to Principal Chief David Hill to see how they can start the reconciliation process. I did reach out to the Muscogee Nation after the decision. They said in part, quote, "We are currently reviewing the order to understand its basis as well as its implications for our processes." I do have their full statement for you in this story on our website at kjrh.com.
Translation: this is not a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, apparently, but by the Supreme Court of the Creek Muscogee Nation, an Indian tribe. And the premises, if I recall from what I was exposed to some while ago, is that if you were a slave and you got bought by the Creek, and as a result of this 1866 treaty, they set you free, you then became a Creek automatically. That's kind of the opposite of birthright. You weren't born to the Creek, you got bought by the Creek. Now, there were 5 civilized tribes: Creek, Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole. They were called the civilized tribes. Some of them owned slaves, and some of them were notorious slave catchers because Native Americans knew the forest and the swamps, and they caught runaway Negroes for the Southern whites. Now, it also has some interesting implications. We made Juneteenth a holiday ostensibly because it recognized the end of slavery, but this treaty we're talking about to free the slaves that were held by the Creek Nation occurred after Juneteenth. So Juneteenth didn't free all the slaves within the continental United States at all. Several people have talked about that. It's interesting. His great-great-great-great-grandmother. I'm Choctaw. My grandmother was a Choctaw, so that's a lot closer than great-great-great-great. 1, 2, 3, 4 he's 5th generation removed, but I understand the sentiment.
Well, here's what only thing I want to say on this, because when I saw this story yesterday, I called on my mother and I was asking her about her mother's side of the family, because there is some Indian in them. So apparently, my grandmother on my mother's side, which would be my mother's mother, she's 95 or 96. She has Alzheimer's and is kind of dipping into dementia now. However, I remember seeing a picture of a white man and this woman that looks native. And they were a picture of my grandmother's grandparents. So my grandmother's mother is Black and Native, and I believe white, because her parents, her father was white Irish, and the mother was Black and Indian. And then, and my mother was like, I don't know for sure, but that's kind of how it went. I said, well, y'all didn't talk about it, you know, and it was like, no, we didn't hear any stories, because the Indian side, the native side, it was Cherokee. They didn't deal with Black people. If you had one, he was like, as you understand back then, if you had 1 ounce of Black, they just labeled you as Black, no matter what else you was mixed with. So that went, the Indians did the same thing. They just kind of disowned, discredit, or just didn't, acknowledge Black people that was part of their tribe, whether it's by blood or by way of, who they enslaved with this situation as well. So on my mother's side, my mother's side, they always just identified as Black, even though their blood does have Cherokee. And then my aunt, who kind of have a little bit more accuracy, because my mother was kind of vague, because again, they did not grow up in a household where they talked about that. They just didn't, they just ignored that part of their DNA. It could have been my grandmother's grandfather, who was Irish and Cherokee, but this Cherokee there. And the point I'm trying to make, our Cherokee side, lineage, never accepted us because we were mixed with Black. I would say them back then. So to see this with this case today, right? Well, we just see this case today. I'm happy, because it kind of shows you that not just white people, but Indians and everyone else did not want to acknowledge, accept, or give credit to Black people.
Well, there's a lot of that. By the way, did you see the movie Inglourious Bastards with Brad Pitt?
Yes.
Remember, he was half Cherokee, and he was the one that hated Nazis so bad, and they were going through Germany doing into Nazis and all the rest as guerrillas. I know a bunch of people in Tennessee, particularly East Tennessee, who are half, 4th Cherokee, and they fit right into the white community. They do line dances and cowboy boots and all the rest of it.
So the picture that I've seen at my grandmother's house, it was that picture of her grandparents, or it could have been her parents on her mother's side, but I think it was her grandparents on her mother's side. They looked white, but you could tell the woman was quote unquote colored, but she was very fair skinned. So I say all that to just say that you have a lot of people going around saying, well, we were already here before the enslaved Africans, and we are native born, blah, 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 blah. And no, some people are, a lot of people are not. However, to that point, the natives did not want to acknowledge or bring in Black people who were part of their tribe by way of owning them and by way of bloodline.
It depended upon the tribe. It was basically the 5 that counted that I recited. Interestingly enough, everybody keeps talking about Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. truth of the matter is the black folk in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at the time there was that tragedy that had occurred. The black folk didn't own anything. They were renting from the Native Americans, the same tribe of Native Americans that owned some of their parents and grandparents as slaves. And they rented properties. They weren't property holders, they were property renters. But the interesting thing is, as we keep focusing on Tulsa, Black Wall Street, when between 1918 and 1922, there were 123 instances where something like that happened in the United States in various places. We ignore what happened in Washington, D.C. in 1919 when there was a 5-day long riot and several hundred people died. But interestingly enough, more white people than black people died because there was a Black Veterans Convention. These guys had just gotten back from the trenches in France. And when this thing started going down, the black Pullman car porters smuggled in guns from Baltimore, and the black soldiers who had just been discharged in the last several months before this got up on the roofs of the tenements and started sniping the people that were trying to burn the tenements down. They wound up having to call in the cavalry. So I don't know why we keep focusing on Black Wall Street, where the black folk didn't own anything, they rented it. And then here you have the nation's capital where there was a riot, but the black folk won. But nobody talks about that. I wonder why that is so badly suppressed, and this loss is so firmly pushed. Is it like somebody's got an interest to convince us that we never succeeded at anything by standing up for ourselves? Like Candace Owens is doing here. And we always got victimized, but forget about the nation's capital witnessed black folk win. But we don't talk about that.
Well, you know what? It was an actual movie that came out in 2020 called The 24th, and it was about those black soldiers in the year 1919 that was, tearing some mess up, getting back at the white people who were domestically terrorizing, which you just was talking about. There was a movie. It's called The 24th. You should check it out.
Yeah,
So
but I mean, it didn't get any PR. You get the Woman King, where you glorify a tribe full of African slave catchers, and then you try to mythologize the whole thing by saying women were running the show when they weren't. What the deal was is two heirs to the throne of Dahomey. What they did was they said, instead of let's trying to kill each other, let's cooperate. And by the way, let's set up a new thing. So instead of having the tribal nobility hold all these offices, let's pick commoners. And let's bring in the sisters and female relatives of the commoners and hold them hostage for good behavior. And let's throw a little loop in this. We'll let their female relatives have veto power over whatever they do. They didn't have a woman army. They didn't have a woman king. Nowhere around it. They had about a battalion full of what everybody, the Europeans, principally the Dutch, and the English, and then the Dutch primarily after that, they just called Amazon. So,
let me do a correction, because that movie, The 24th, it tells the story of an all-black 24th Infantry Regiment and
that's
Houston
Buffalo Soldiers.
Well, let me finish. An all-black 24th Infantry Regiment and the Houston riot of 1917, which involved clashes between the soldiers and the police. The riot, stemming from rumors of soldiers' death at the hands of police, resulted in significant loss of life and a major court-martial.
Okay, here's what happened with that. I did a paper on it. You have the 24th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Regiment, the 9th Cavalry Regiment, regiment, and you had the 10th Cavalry Regiment, and there was an artillery regiment, I forget the number, And those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 regiments were black, and they were known collectively as the Buffalo Soldiers. We only think of 9th and 10th Cavalry as Buffalo Soldiers, but it included that infantry battalion. And actually, you have to go back a little bit further. There was some invasion of the southern border. Pancho Villa and that bunch came over. And you had Theodore Roosevelt, who got involved in this whole process. And he had previously ordered, when some of the black Buffalo Soldiers protested vigorously and got in a shootout in a Texas bar a few years before that, he had ordered 20-some Buffalo Soldiers executed by firing squad for defending themselves. That's the person they named the teddy bear after. Now, what you're talking about was another court-martial because the black soldiers said, we're tired of this. Now, the truth of the matter is the Texas Rangers play a big part in this. More Buffalo Soldiers were killed over a 25-year period by the Texas Rangers than they were by Native Americans. All right. Colonel Grierson, who was played by John Wayne in Horse Soldier, where they didn't put a black person in there, he had led some black cavalry soldiers from Memphis, Tennessee and Jackson, Tennessee on a huge cavalry sweep through the South. Was totally brilliant, and he got impressed by black soldiers, and he volunteered to be the colonel for the 10th Cavalry. So the Texas Rangers for years tried to ambush Colonel Grierson and arrest him for causing Negroes, meaning the Buffalo Soldier regiment that he commanded, to get out of hand. So it's a long story that goes through that whole thing. And it's really sick and sordid about what happened. I had an uncle,
But no, I
great
get
uncle,
wrap it up.
I won't get in it, but I got an earful of this over and over again and did a paper
Okay.
when I was in college about it. But it's absolutely awful, the things that got done to the loyal, courageous, brave black soldiers who were part of the 24th, 25th Infantry, 9th Cavalry, 10th Cavalry, and I think it was maybe the 61st Artillery Battalion. I'm not sure.
All right. Well, that is it for today for Injustice for All. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we will see you in the next video.